I found this tweet, which is, basically rage bait, but it made me rage and I wanted to respond to it real quick. Let's take a look. So this person says, okay, Angular devs. I don't know why it's Angular devs. This is just TypeScript. But this one can be interesting. What are the mistakes that you can find? And how do we end up here? Okay, and he has this screenshot of an interface user. Okay, let's take a look at this. So I have it here. And the question is, what mistakes can you see? All right, so I'll give you like a second. Yeah, that should be enough time. Okay, so interface user ID, email, password. If you're not familiar with TypeScript, ID with a question mark, password with a question mark, that means these are optional fields. So what is wrong with this? So first thing I'll say that is totally wrong with this is I have no idea what it's supposed to do. That's the big problem here. I have no idea what this is. Is this a user model? Like, is this a database model or some kind of model that we pass around the system and we say this represents a user? If so, there are a lot of issues here. If not, if this is something that belongs to like a form, so it's kind of form data, right? So, okay, the user's typing stuff in and this is the information about the user in a form, in a particular form. Again, that's not here, so I have no idea. Okay, so the very first thing I would want them to do, jump up here, put a little doc block, and then let's explain what this thing is, right? So let's say this represents a user in a database or something like that, okay? Whatever it ends up having to be. All right, and then if we do that, then we can do function get user, or no, function save user, okay? Yeah, that's good, save user, and we'll throw a user here, and we say it's user, and if we do that, and then we hover over this, oh, and I am blocking it. I will move my head up here. There, now I can see anytime, right? So with IntelliSense, right, represents a user in a database. So that's going to be everywhere now. So I definitely want that. All right, I want to explain like, what is this thing supposed to be? Okay, and let's just go with that assumption that this is a user in a database. So ID is optional. Why is an ID optional? So the only reason I can imagine a user not having an ID is if they're not quite a user yet. But guess what? If they're not a user yet, they're not a user yet. So don't make the ID optional, all right? I don't want in my system to ever have to check, okay, this user I have, are they really a user? No, they aren't a user, okay? Now, you could have a guest, right? You could have some other elaborate term, right? Somebody about to become a user, right? But it's not a user yet. But it doesn't stop there. Email, okay, so the user has an email. Maybe this is okay. How many emails can a user have? Right now, probably one, right? But potentially more than one, right? They might have 1 or 2 or 3 emails, something like that. Like a user isn't an email. That's not part of a user. User might have one, right? So I'd want a separate entity for that. Now, if it's a small enough app, this might be okay. The last one, password, question mark. Again, this makes me think this must be a form because why would you be storing the password on the user? First of all, don't store a password, right? You store a hash of a password. Second, is the password part of a user? No, not really. Again, so a user may have a password, right? But I would create that as a separate entity. And one of the benefits of, creating that as a separate entity, you have different like created at, deleted at, that type of thing on the password itself. Again, you're storing the hash, you're not actually storing the password. Okay, and if we're really getting into it, why is the ID a number, right? So I guess we're probably using some kind of relational database and we're incrementing from 1 to whatever, right? But I wouldn't want to see that, right? So I would ID to be probably a string. Maybe we can make a more specific type, but at least I think it's going to be a string. I would get rid of email. I would get rid of password. Maybe we'd have a name on here, right? Maybe, right? And name would also be a string. I think I'd be pretty happy with that as my base user class or interface or whatever this thing is supposed to be. But again, this is rage bait, like this person's doing this and saying, okay, what's wrong? How do we end up here? And it's like, well, you wrote bad code and you posted on Twitter. I don't know.